I'm Nicole, and I am so excited to be here with you today. We are going to go through a couple different processes on how to become a better watercolorist. It doesn't matter if you're at the beginning levels or at the expert levels. The two skills that I'm going to go through today are going to help wherever you're at in your skill set just improve. The first skill is learning how to blend colors. We're gonna work in a triangle and we're gonna learn how to mix the yellow to the red, blue, and back up to yellow. I'm gonna give you tips and tricks along the way. No matter what skill set you're at or what age you're at, you can improve. The second skill is how to fade your color from color to white. Because in watercolor, you don't have white to paint with, you just use the paper. So we are going to mix in our palette the desired color and then fade it from the pigment to the white paper. This is a skill in watercolor that you have to learn how to do, and you have to do it pretty quick and pretty proficiently, and these two skills will hopefully do just that. Help you improve your mixing of colors and do gradients. So let's go. Let's talk about a few of the supplies that you're gonna need. You're gonna need a rack, paints, paintbrushes, paper. I like to work with a cadmium yellow, quinacridine red, and blue. Now this isn't the blue that I always work with. Sometimes it's phthalo blue and sometimes it's ultramarine blue, but cobalt blue is the one I decided to try this time. Let's do this. The first thing to do when you're watercolor painting is to get your paints wet. I haven't used my paints in a little bit, or even if it's just overnight, so I actually just take my paints and drop a little bit of water into all of the little circles just to soften up the paint. Now, if you've got a spray bottle and you can do that. You just spray it all in. Tip that's awesome that I've seen people do. It's not something that I'm in real great practice for, but some people will have 2 water containers. And that's so that you can keep one of the water containers clean, mostly clean always. You're gonna find that the water turns pretty nasty as time goes on. I'm gonna keep my paper horizontal because the goal right now is to mix colors. Right now we're gonna start at the top. Just like we have here, yellow, blue, red. We're gonna start at the top and we're gonna work from light to dark, mixing the secondary colors along the way. So we have our yellow. I'm gonna start with that one. I like to get my brush nice and wet, and then I'm gonna work in a little bit of this wet paint with a little bit of my dry paint. And you'll see, as I'm working it in, I get a little pigment in the end of my brush. The goal here is to mimic the color wheel. And what I have here on my color palette is essentially what I'm gonna try to do. So yellow right at the top. And I love painting big. So I'm gonna just do a nice big square right at the top, okay? Now, it's watercolor, so water is your friend. Use water. I'm gonna drag out a little bit of this yellow on both sides, okay? Using and kind of holding my brush at kind of a 45-degree angle. We're just gonna get this a little wet. Now, the purpose is that when we get to our red and our blue, which will be in these bottom 2 corners, then we'll drag the water up to meet and we'll see what happens. It's like magic. It's my favorite. Okay, let's get a little blue now. Now, I can see in here that the last time I painted, I kind of contaminated my blue with a lot of green. So I actually wash off my blue with just the paint, or with just the water. I get my brush wet with just water, and then I come in here and I just kind of wash it off and blend it and mix it all up in. Now, oh, left a drop of blue. I'm gonna put just straight pigment down here in this bottom corner. I'm gonna do another square down here in this bottom corner. And I'm gonna get a little water. You can see where it's leaving paper showing through. I want just a nice block of blue, okay? Now, without drying off my brush, I'm just gonna add more water to my brush. So now the concentrated amount of water to pigment in my brush is more water, and I'm going to pull while there's still blue in my brush, pull up to connect. Now, I'm gonna stop right here because we're gonna take a guess. I kind of led on to this earlier, but blue is a powerful color, okay? Blue goes a long ways. I have blue in my brush right now, and if I leave that blue in my brush, then more than likely this blue is going to bleed all the way up into the yellow and really kind of just get all over in that yellow's business. And I don't want that. I gotta save my yellow. So I'm actually gonna take a minute and rinse out my brush. You can even rinse it in here and kind of put that watery blue so that we're saving pigment back in your tray. Dry out my brush. And now my brush is mostly pigment free, right? I'm gonna get a little bit of water, so there's only water, and I am going to, yep, what'd I tell you? Just seam the line. What'd I say about blue being powerful? Oh, this is so powerful. But I don't want it to take over all of that yellow, so I'm gonna actually pull it in a little bit. But as we're doing this, you guys, can you see what color it's going? Eek! It's the best! It's green. Now, this is perfect. Oh, and isn't it so pretty? Look at this, look at the veining. I love it. So pretty. Okay, now, something else that is helpful when you're watercoloring is actually to tape down your paper. I'm not gonna do it on this one because the goal here is just to move quickly. The reason I like to move quickly in watercolor is, or I like to kind of keep that in the subconscious of my workflow, is because sometimes we get too we get into analysis paralysis and we continue to paint strokes on our paper, which ends up muddying up our paint overall. And we don't want that here. Watercolor needs the white of the paper to shine through the paint so that it looks alive and it looks fresh and it doesn't look muddy. So we're gonna leave what we have going on here. Water is not controllable. And that's partly why I love it, because there is a fair amount to chance and just creativity of its own flow. I'm gonna let the beautifulness work its way out here, and we're gonna go over to red. My quadacridine, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but quadacridine red. Okay, let's get us a nice block here. So I've got a lot of pigment, and the way I can tell I've got a lot of pigment is because it leaves like a texture of white behind it, if that makes sense. See how that is? When I paint a nice stroke, the white paper starts coming through. So I'm gonna just get a little bit of water to help blend basically this whole square into one nice block. Nice, huh? Now again, because I know, no, I can tell this is dried. Didn't work quick enough. That's okay. Red, it's kind of a lot of red in there. I'm gonna send red. I have a lot of red in my paintbrush, and I'm kind of a miser. I like to save every piece of pigment that I can. So I don't necessarily want to get my red in my tray really watery. So instead, I'm going to just offload the pigment by getting water in the brush and just pushing it against the side of my tray here so that the water and the pigment flows down into here. Then when I need some sort of orange, I can use a little bit of this, and it will actually, a little bit of yellow with a little bit of the watered down pigment, and it will actually go a long way. So I'm gonna leave that there. But now my brush is mostly clean. I'm gonna rinse this one out a little bit, mostly because I don't want the same experience that happened here. I'm gonna take water now, and I am going to paint a pathway up to our yellow. Now, because I've let things dry, we've got a nice watery pathway. You see that? How it's all nice and watery. Yes. Kind of blending it in. I want it to go from really high pigmented to water, okay? The next step that we're gonna, the next skill that we're gonna learn is going to be just that, okay? So these are the two skills that I absolutely teach every beginner that I ever teach, because it's important, A, to learn how to mix your own paint, and then B, to learn the consistency of water and pigment. And it just takes time, and you have to experiment, and you have to mess up, and you have to just have fun to figure it out, okay? So again, we're going back, emptying my brush from the red because I don't want to contaminate the white or the yellow. And right now I know that my yellow is dry. So I'm gonna just wet my entire yellow block again. I'm gonna scrub out that line a little bit so there's not a hard line, and load my brush with water one more time. And you see that bead of white? We're just painting the bead of white and then watching it flow. Sometimes when it's a little dry as it is, it doesn't flow as nicely. So if we have to help it a little bit, we will. I'm actually gonna get just a little bit of yellow and paint a little bit of yellow in here. Add my little bit of water. Oh yes, I can see it turning. Gonna help this out a little bit, but you can see what color it's becoming. Beautiful! This green went really well. It took really nicely. Oh, but don't you love that? I do. Okay, the next one. Now I can tell that this is both dry, well, mostly dry, okay? So what I'm actually gonna do is just straight water. Load the paintbrush with water, and we're just gonna start drawing, just fanning out a good amount of this pigment of red. Now, it's not hard dry, for lack of more technical term. The red or the blue isn't. It's like a soft dry, meaning that I can still wet it with paint or with water and pull the pigment into more spaces that I want it to go, which is so cool, right? Okay, I'm gonna create a stopping point there because we've got to leave ourselves a white bleed mark. Now, I kind of came over the center line maybe just a hair, or I will come over a little bit more extended, because again, blue is a super powerful color and it will just overtake most colors, and I want to keep the true red to be true red. Okay, so we're going to scrub out this soft line, get some more water in our brush, and paint into, I'm gonna get some more of this pigment. You see this? You see how that just bleeds? Oh my gosh, I need a close-up of that. Oh, it's so pretty. Okay. Are you ready? Are you ready for it? Okay. Now, just water. You can tell that my water is getting nice and dirty. It's okay. It's okay, girl. But, watered paintbrush, and then I'm just going to paint the seam. Boom. Look at that powerful blue. It always is. Always is. Oh, and look at it. I just love it. Something else that I like to do if I don't want to get like in there like I did with the orange is I just tip it. Ooh, watch it bleed. It's like a rainbow. Oh, I love this. Oh, look, and the orange is coming down. Look, and you're getting a little bit of green. Gosh. I literally could sit here and just watch this paint dry. It's so pretty. But that's how you're gonna do your color wheel. There you are, ta-da, you got your yellows that bleed into green, making blue, bleeding into purple. Let's see if we can true up this purple a little bit. There's your blue purple, and as we bring it over here, you get more of a ready purple or a true like violet. And then as you go over here, you get more of that like fuchsia, maybe? Magenta is the right color, right? But this just all depends on kind of what you add to it. Hopefully you saw what I did there. I just went in and grabbed a little bit of blue from my palette and I just kind of scrubbed it in this way and watched it mix, right? We got our blue here, but as we kind of come in and as we're gonna pull in a little bit of red into it, it just begins to change. Now I want a little more red. Look at that. So that is the blend. Oh, I love it. So let's do that same thing right here to this yellow and blue, okay? And then we're gonna have our perfect triangle of awesomeness. Okay, but we've been working with these really dark, powerful colors, so when you come back to yellow, you gotta clean your brush because you don't want this dark blue in this yellow or in this yellow because then it just drives you nuts. Which it actually doesn't really drive me nuts, you just clean it out and do it again. But I'm gonna load up on a little bit of, when I say load up, I'm just gonna get it in my brush. And then I'm going to start down with straight pigment, a little bit of water, and just wet this all up. There it went. Do you see that green? And I'm not even gonna pull a ton of blue because I know I can see that I've got blue pigment just right in here, and I'm gonna just scrub that out. And did you see how that turned that dark forest green? Oh yeah, baby. Don't wanna lose that lime green, and blue is powerful. I think that's the 5th time I've said it, and I'll say it again. If I pull this blue back up in here, then I lose the richness of this yellow, okay? So we're gonna leave that. Now I am going to clean out my brush again. And I want this lime green a little more prominent, so I'm gonna get a little more yellow and work into the darks. Oh yeah, there it went. Do you see that? And this just takes time to learn. I've painted 100 of these and they come out different every time. And that's the cool thing about watercolor, is never will one piece ever be the same. But this is so cool. Now it's all gonna dry a little bit differently because some points, like this yellow right here is, oh, it's kind of wet. But there's really wet spots, there's really dry spots. I'm gonna put this to the side for right now and we'll check in on it in just a minute and then we'll move to this next part. I'm gonna just start at the top of the food chain and work down. Yellow, we always work with light, start with the bright. I'm gonna basically just paint a line out, paintbrush wide. I'm using my square brush right now, okay? And I got a lot of pigment on there. We're gonna come in here and I'm just gonna add water. Clean it off, dry off the brush a little bit, pull that water out. We're gonna watch as it kind of lightens to a lighter yellow because that white of the paper starts kind of shining through a little bit. Now, something that I have learned is that my brush is clean and with just water in it, and I'm gonna paint back into the pigment and watch it run a little bit. You see how that runs? The idea again here is to go from pigment to white. Okay, moving on to orange. I'm gonna work down and around this way. We're gonna take our yellow. I've already kind of pre-mixed these, but you take a little bit of yellow with a touch of red and mix that in there for a nice pumpkin orange. Now we're gonna throw down as much pigment as we can here again. Because this tray right here has a nice watered down amount, I'm gonna get as much pigment into that part as I can. Okay, and then we're gonna just paint out. Ooh, my teacher used to call this a Indian yellow because it has just a nice glow to it. Now, I'm gonna clean off my brush, nice and dry, get a little bit of water in it, start on the opposite end and paint back into my pigment. Then it pushes all that pigment back up in here, and then as it bleeds forward, it creates its own gradient going into the white paper. But I can tell that there's a nice thick bead here, which means that all that pigment's gonna probably collaborate here on the end. I don't want that, so I'm taking a dry brush in there and kind of cleaning up that bead of water so that it doesn't go all the way to the end. The goal here for me is to not have a hard line. You can already see how this is drying and it's a nice pretty gradient. That's the goal. Okay, now we're gonna do a little bit darker of an orange. So I'm gonna take my yellow and I'm gonna put it right in here. Nice good mix of yellow, and because yellow is a light color, I am gonna go straight into my darker color red, and you can see it there. We got our nice little bit of red on the tip of that, and I'm gonna mix that in here with a little bit of water, and we get that nice deep kind of yellowy orange. Now I've got a lot of pigment, less water in here. It's a great start. I'm gonna lay down just a little bit of a line there. Touch the water, add a little water. Remember, we are watercoloring, friends. The water is your friend. Haha. Now I'm gonna pull it out with just true water. Drying off my brush, getting water in the tip of my brush, and again painting back into the pigment. Watching that pigment run, as it runs, I clean out my brush again. And I'm gonna go through my habit that I can tell that I'm getting into with this to make this work is now I take my dry brush and I clean up that white so it goes really white, and just to the point that I can see it bleeding. The paint's still bleeding, okay? I think I might have done a little too much on that one, so no problem. Just add a little bit of water to it, even from this end. Just a nice soft, like, hey, come on, little help, little encouragement. There we go. There we go. Okay, let's move on to red. We might have to come back in and touch that up a little bit. I'm gonna take my little bit of red right here, basically pigment straight quadacridine red, baby. It's really nice, strong, powerful color. Fades nicely into kind of a pink. Get some water in my brush, pull out a little bit more. More water, more drying, more water, and again, painting backwards into it. This seems to be working nicely. Okay, pull out those whites a little bit, let that gradient continue to flow. So my brush was pretty dry, and as I come in here to help it, you can tell that it kind of whitened it up. It's not really what I want, so I know that I need to add a little bit more water here to the pigment so that it continues to pull. Okay, and I'm gonna go through this process again of just adding clear water there and coming back into it. One more time with a dry brush. Okay, we're gonna let that bleed for a little bit. See how nicely this gradients are looking? This is nice. Okay, let's head into more of like a red with a touch of blue, okay? Just a touch. So I've got my red in my paintbrush. Touch the end of my paintbrush. Can you see that? Just basically the very end of my paintbrush. And I'm gonna mix it here. And it turns out to be kind of like a bright fuchsia. I'm gonna get most of that pigment out and then pull this that's here. Add a little bit of water to this end. This is my nice clear water. Meeting back up with that pigmenty water. And watch it run. This is literally the coolest part. That water running and kind of creating its own paths has always mesmerized me. Okay, now I'm gonna work with what we had here by just adding a little more blue, okay? Blue is a powerful color again, and I just want to get that tip of blue, if you can see, and I wanna just add it to that. I'm gonna need a little more water. I can tell this is drying out a little bit. There we go. Nice, rich, deep purple. Okay, I'm gonna throw this down here. Yeah, isn't that fun? This is like mama purple to me. My mom loves purple, so does my mother-in-law. This is the purple that I think of when I think of that mama purple. It actually has a little more blue in it than I anticipated, which I could lighten it up with red, but you know, we're gonna send it. Go for it. Okay, straight blue. I can tell that I got a little bit of yellow in there. There's a little bit of green. It's like the foreshadowing of a story. Do you know where we're going next? To the greens. All right, I know blue is powerful, so I'm gonna give it a little longer runway. Maybe I gave it too long of a runway. Oh, and my brush isn't dry. That could have been bad. Dry or clean. All right. We got a picky purple showing up here. Gotta clean that up because as we come into our greens, we can't have purple contaminating it. All right, next color. I'm gonna throw down actually like a forest green, okay? So let's take care. Now, when I mix my greens, I always start with my light color because that light color gets lost really easily. And I got like no spaces, right? But I know that this is dry in here and I'm already going for green, so we're gonna mix in yellow right there. And then because we're doing a deep forest green, I'm gonna add a fair amount of blue. So we touch that blue here. See that blue? I got kind of loaded up that paintbrush with blue. Come on, find it. You did it. I'm gonna load it up with blue and I'm gonna just add it to it. Yeah, baby. Now that green that I've kind of left on that blue, that kind of comes out really easily. So we just kind of keep painting it down and adding blue, adding blue. Now there's a little red in there and I'm gonna say, I like a little bit of red because a little bit of red in a yellow blue mixture making green will give you an even, that's how they get the phthalo blue, is they add just a touch of red to drop it even darker. All right, here we'll go. Now, one of the questions maybe you've asked yourself or maybe you've thought of is, great, we've got all the colors of the rainbow. What about the neutral colors? Can you do those too? Absolutely, okay? How do you make brown? It's just a mix of all of the yellow, the red, and the blue. How do you make gray? Again, it's just mixing yellow, red, and blue. Maybe I'll do a whole tutorial on that. All right, so we're gonna pull this out here, get that green to bleed. Now, if you have any tricks that you've heard or new things that you've learned along the way, I would love to hear it in the comments below. And of course, always like and subscribe, right? Helps us out a ton. Now, again, going into the green, because now we're coming back out of these really dark, powerful colors, I'm gonna start still with the yellow and we're gonna try to make that lime green. Now, I pulled some yellow in here and I am going to come right into this tray right here and then I'm gonna add just a touch of blue. And aiming for a lime green. Dang, I think we did it. Lime green, it's a lighter color, which means that it's not as powerful, kind of gets shadowed out, so I come in a little longer with my pigment. Grab my water, paint back into that pigment. Ooh, I kind of, you see that nice lime greeny pigment with my white? You almost missed it. It almost got lost, you didn't notice it, huh? It's because it is a light color. But it's easy to clean up, look at that. Like it never even happened, all the way to white. What a great gradient. Okay, great, we did it. Now, what else? What other color are we missing? We've already cycled all the way back. We need another green, don't we? Absolutely. Gotta finish the page. All right, we're just finishing up here. And if we go back and give ourselves a grade, right? I love this, and this is just pure enjoyment to me. But if we go back and give ourselves a grade of what the purpose was here, is to not create these hard lines, I would say we did a pretty dang good job, okay? You can see right here that there's this nice hard line here, but for the most part, every other stroke bleeds and fades out, and they fade out differently, right? Some of them fade out deeper in here. Remember that strong blue that we were talking about? I only put a little bit here and then brought the water line all the way to it. That's about what it did. These other ones, like I think it was this green, I basically brought that out to here. You can see those lines and then let it fade from there. But the best ones I think are the ones that are like that actual true gradient that you can't see that hard line. That one was still wet. But these are skills and tricks that no matter your expertise in this topic, you can always go back and get back to the basics of learning how and watching water blend and move together. This is a skill and a trick that I teach every beginner class and that I encourage them to do. I encourage them to learn to mix the colors and be confident and know how to get from one color to the next color. Predict it in your brain. I want that forest green, and then go get it and go figure out how to make it. And try adding a little blue and a little red. Have some fun with it. That was awesome, wasn't it? Now you can add 2 more skills to your pocket and you can get back to it another time. We will see you guys next time, but don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, have a great day and keep painting. See ya!